opening up the hole that the berserker had created in the enemy shield wall and ripping the Franks' formation open. They shredded it, dismembered it, split it wide apart. In a dozen heartbeats, the shield wall was no more. Dazed black cloaks were reeling back on all sides, and Bjarki was still roaring and stamping, hacking and stomping, and slaughtering any man within range of his bloody sword, any man who had the courage to stand before him. His comrades were hard on his heels, howling, shoving the now terrified Franks in all directions, spears flickering out to rip away Christian lives. Tor's 4 bowmen, still 50 yards away, loosed 2 more volleys, and 2 more, after which they ran eagerly down the hill to join the fray. "Ward Bjarki Bloodhand! Ward the berserker!" Tor yelled as she ran. A group of 3 black cloaks on foot saw Tor and her comrades pelting towards them, shouted a challenge, and stood so as to bar their careening path. While he was still running, to Tor's astonishment, one of the bowmen plucked a shaft, knocked and loosed, and sunk it into the leading black cloak's neck. Tor took a heavy chop on his shield from the second man, threw the sword off its painted leather face, and buried her own in the man's belly. He made a whooshing sound, like a punctured pig's bladder, and collapsed. The third man took to his heels and ran away. Bjarki was still running, Tor saw, screaming, slathered, and dripping. It was clear the berserker was heading towards the black tent. Yes, and there, throwing open the flap and striding out, Tor recognized the tall black cloak captain. Bjarki saw him too, howled at him like a mad dog, changed direction, and began to bound towards the astonished enemy officer, whirling his red glistening sword in great loops as he charged. There was a thunder of hooves, and before Bjarki could get within a dozen yards of the captain of the Franks, a score of cavalry surged round from behind the huge tent and crashed straight into the berserker's massive form, bowling him over like a kicked ball of rags. The iron-shod hooves of the horses, knocking him this way and that. The black cloak riders, thundering over his body, jabbed down with their javelins at Bjarki's rolling, jerking, thrashing body, plunging their steel points into his flesh. They reined in, turned quickly, and rode over to her brother, all over again. Tor shouted, "No!" and lost sight of the berserker in the dust cloud. A huge black cloak officer on foot popped up in front of Tor, and she was obliged to exchange a series of cuts with this warrior, his helmet plume nodding like a fighting cock's wattle, before an archer put a yard of ash through the man's chest from a dozen paces and ended the bout. When Tor looked again towards the black tent, she saw all her comrades swarming over the Frankish riders, leaping up at the men in their saddles, hauling them down to earth, where they savaged them with swords and knives. Others were dueling with the mounted men, lunging up at them with spears, or cowering beneath the hacking swords and pawing hooves of their trained horses. There was no sign of Bjarki at all. Where was he? Where was her big, bad wrecker brother? Tor stared about her wildly. Bjarki was gone, disappeared. Dead, no doubt at all. Trampled under the plunging hooves of the cavalry, that knowledge struck her like a kick to the heart. Bjarki's plan had failed. Her brother was dead. Part 1. 5 months earlier. Chapter 1. The Top of the World. Bjarki Bloodhand squinted against the whipping flurries of snow that constantly assaulted his eyes. He wiped a mittened hand across his brow, his face now numb with cold, and thought he saw it again. Something moving out there, on the dim horizon to his right. A dark mass shifting across the whiteness of the ice fields. In an hour or two, it would be dark again. The days pitifully short up here on this rim of the world, only a brief few hours of light at this time of year. There. Yes. Movement for sure. He stumbled forwards eagerly, his deerskin-wrapped legs punching through the snow crust and into a foot of airy powder before finding the frozen earth. A wading action more than a walk, and utterly exhausted.